Good evening, guys, and welcome back to the Muddy Creek Podcast. Tonight we have Mel Skahan. I'm really excited that he's given up his time tonight to come on to the podcast. He's agreed to a Q&A with you guys, and I think that's outstanding because I've never heard him in the Q&A. Have watched some of his interviews. I love his approach to the subject. He has given his service our country as a U.S. Forestry Service. He always, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yakam. Then you went to the Yakam Forestry Service. Am I saying your reservation?
At Yakama.
Yakama. Well, I told you I would slaughter a name in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And also did Forestry Service there. He was a contributor to the BFRO. Over his time, he's collected over 1,200 stories on his reservation. He is also very down to earth. His approach to the subject to me is just he stays true to his culture. He stays true to his values, and I think he is just one of the most amazing people that I've watched in a long time. I like the fact he keeps politics out of it, and he's just he loves what he does. He's very stern in his beliefs. His culture has led him a lot to his discoveries, and he's here tonight to share it. Did I get any of that wrong, Mel? Is there anything you'd like to correct me on?
Oh, no. You got everything correct.
So let's go back to the beginning. You first observed tracks while you were out with a coworker in the Washington Mountains. Is that correct?
Well, no, that was years after my discovery of them for the first time. But the real solid proof of a track line that I ever followed was in the wintertime. And I was with a coworker, and we were sent out to an area to collect forestry data. And we were in the process of putting a timber sale in there. And my job was to collect all the timber data, and then any streams or creeks or bubbling brooks that may have not been mapped. So I had even though I was one person working with another person, we had a lot of data that we had to collect in order to move forward, in order not to, at that time we weren't thinking Bigfoot, Sasquatch, forest people. We were protecting the environment. We were protecting all the other forest animals, the bear, the deer, that had roamed the area. And this happened to be in an area where it bordered our wildlife management area, where the animals seek shelter, that are not hunted and not bothered. And so we were on the edge of that as well. So we had a lot of things that was going through my mind to make sure, everything was collected properly.
Now, your love for nature, did that draw you to the Forestry Service?
I know it was an accident, really. I mean, even though around the reservation, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they took us all hunting, they took us all fishing, recreating on the Yakama Reservation. And to learn from them how to hunt, how to fish, how to collect foods was great. But I never thought that it was going to take me and be part of my life. Not only for myself, but for everybody else around me, that I was protecting all these foods for my generation and then the generations afterwards.
We have a lot of people here that get upset with our wildlife for they issue the citations and stuff, but that's exactly what you're doing. You're protecting the animals and the environment for the future generations, and it's to be respected. So thank you for your service with that. I really respect that.
Yeah,
I'm kind of jealous over you right now, but that would be an ideal job for me. So can you kind of walk us through the tracks and what you kind of gathered from the tracks? You're really good about, and I told you before the show, one of the things that I was really impressed with you about, and I mean it genuinely from my heart, is you found tracks, but there was also characteristics that you picked up on. Did that happen then, or was it something you went back and you thought about it?
As that day rolled on, and my coworker and I were following these separate tracks, then it started dwelling on me that, there's a possibility when we first arrived, was a possibility that they were fake because they had been out there for a long time. And some of the tracks before they went into the ravine were long. They were not distinct. Couldn't see the toes, but you could see the shape. And I had snowshoes on, so I figured that's what it was somebody else out there in smaller snowshoes than what I was wearing. But once we got out of the sun and then into this small little canyon or riparian area, then further into the shadows, then the track started shrinking, and then you could start seeing the toes. Then you could start seeing what looked like dermal ridges in the snow from them standing there. And so that led for me to believe that this was not another coworker of mine that had been there previously. And when I started following the tracks, I started following the large one, and the large one had a 22-inch track.
Wow.
And it was humongous. I mean, it was almost the size of my snowshoes that I was wearing. And so what he was doing as I started following him is that he was staying. So if this is the ravine here, he was up above the other two, and he was staying on that little plateau above that riparian area, and he was moving from tree to tree. And so he was moving in the direction that they wanted to go. And so he would go up to the large ponderosa pines, the large Doug firs that were there. And I'm talking about 33 to 50-inch trees that are really wide. And this was an old growth forest, so it was shadowed, and it had multi-layers to it. So we had the large trees, the codominants and the intermediate, and then the little seedlings and saplings that were popping up through the snow. And so when I was following that track, he would go up to these large trees, and then he would stand in one spot, because when I approached the tree that he did the first one, you could see down where his feet were pointed at the tree like this. You could see the toes up here. And then he moved side to side around that tree, and he was looking forward in the direction that they were going to see if anything was up that direction. And so when he left that tree, he backed away and sidestepped. Then he started walking, and then he went to the next tree. And then he repeated that process again, where you saw his tracks and his toes towards the tree. And then he moved this way so that he could see around the tree. And then when he thought it was safe, then he moved to the next tree. He did this for a good half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, where he was just moving along that plateau, tree to tree. And then the other two that were down below in the riparian creek, they were just moving along up with him as he watched out for the other two. So I left him for a while because I understood what he was doing. And I mean, to see massive tracks, huge toes that he had, almost 2 feet long. And it was mind blowing. And it was also going through my head that, somebody with, wooden feet, was out here faking this stuff. That crossed my mind at one point. But later on, as we started following the other two, which met up with the third, which met up with the male, then that went away, because when I went back down to the creek to look at the other track, and this one was an 18-inch track, and I call her a female because the large, 10, in this, they were bigger. And I figured that the male was the 22-inch and then the female was the 18-inch. And so we started following her, and she wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary other than just an ordinary walk. We could see each step by the creek bed. And then she didn't go into the water. She stayed on the southern side. And then eventually, as the creek went north, she stayed on the western side of the creek. And then she just kept following that creek bed. And then I followed her back down the creek. And then that's when I saw the third track, which was right around 8 to 8.5 inches in length. So just a small foot. And so the reason I didn't pick up on it right away was because the point that I found the little one, he was coming back down from the other side of the creek. So it was flat down here. The male was up here. They were down here, and then on the other side, she allowed him to be to go wander around.
Be juvenile.
Yes, the little juvenile. And so he would go up the hillside and he would just move around through the trees, up the hillside. He wouldn't go all the way up to the top. He stayed mid-slope, and then he walked around through the trees, and then he came back down, and then he walked with her again, and then he broke away from her, and then that little one started walking around. And then what's cool is that as I followed him when he broke away again, he and I don't know if it was a male or female little one, but he meandered, and then there was this log that was covered in snow, and then on top of that log there was this tree that had fallen over, and you could see where he walked out onto the edge of that tree, and then all the snow from that was below it. So I'm guessing that he was bouncing up and down on it, and then where he landed was away from the end of the tree top. And then he walked back down, met up with Mom again, and then they started walking up the creek. And like I said, we followed them for hours. And then that's when I began to think that the personalities started sinking in of the protector, of the father, the nurturing of the mom, watching the little one, and the little one allowing to be a learning one, to be able to break free. And maybe it was to, get him more exercise, tired out. You know how as parents like our kids to be tired out at the end of the day so that they just rest. That was a probability. But he paid no attention. The little one paid no attention to anything. You could see it in his track. He had one single stride that he was moving about, and then came back down. Unlike
he felt safe.
Yeah, and unlike the father, which stopped, moved, stopped, moved, stopped, moved.
The father, I was thinking, the father was doing recon. The mother was comfortable, but the little juvenile just feel absolutely safe. Yeah, and when you get into the mind of that, he has not been exposed to the dangers of the world yet, or what sometimes we do as people. But Dad, doing recon, is very aware of what's out there, and he's protecting his family. That stayed with me the first time I heard you explain that. But another thing that stayed with me is someone with tracking skills would only get that about the log and cover that summary. And I do have a question, if you don't mind, about that.
No.
That's what he's here for, Little Twisted. He's here for the questions. I love Little Twisted. He said, did you hear any communications while observing? He had just come in from feeding his animals. How old do you think these tracks were?
I would say they were about a week old by the time I found them, so they were already out of the area.
Yeah, well, just an old fart. That's his real YouTube name. He says, letting the young one play off some energy. Yes, you really drove home the personalities when you say that. And I mean, to me, every time you explain that and tell someone that, you have to have some kind of empathy or compassion for a living being. Now, you view them as forest people, and
Yes.
we'll get into that for a moment. But I kind of want to back up since I got you here, and since I've been, you've been on numerous shows on Flash of Beauty, Until Radio AM. I found some older, going back 3, 4, 5 years, just really interviews. But so up until that day, you go out with your partner, you're out doing your job. Was it sinking in? How did that change you that day? Did it take a while for it to sink into you, or is this something that's always kind of been, in the back of your mind because, lore or, culture or, the Patty film? Was there, so I guess what I'm asking, did you kind of always know they were there, and this made it a reality for you, or how did that change you that day?
Um, that wasn't the first time that I've come across them, but this is the first time that I've ever been able to follow them for this long and to be able to see the movement and the pattern and of each of that family unit. Because before my encounters, you would hear them, but you would say it was during the springtime, solid ground, wasn't able to track them very well unless you followed the small breaks or the disturbed ground or anything like that, which would not give you much. But to be able to see all this detail in the snow is what hit it hard for me, and then made me realize, oh, this is giving me the shivers. And did I think that they were still around? It was a possibility that they could have circled back around and then, been watching us that day. But from the track line that we followed, they went due north out of the area. And but I did go back. I did go back after work, and I took a camera with me. And, people were always, at that time, I was younger, and my elders told me, especially my family, is that you'll never get pictures of them. You'll never ever have that type of proof. And so I had a camera, roll of film with me, and I went back up. I tried to take my brother with me, but my brother had an encounter with them, and he did not want to go back up. He did not want to go up. And so I went alone, and I took a couple of rulers with me, and that's remeasured everything. A 6-foot walking stride on the male, a 5-foot walking stride on the female, and the little one had anywhere from a foot to 1.5 to 2 feet, depending on if he was running or walking fast or just, and so I got all these pictures, and then I wanted to go back and get pictures of the nest that I found that day too, because when my partner and I separated, we found what I found, because he walked back a different direction than I did. But when I was walking back, I found an area that was a large area, as large as some folks' living room, where the snow had been cleared out. And remember, I said anywhere from, depending on where you were at, it was up to 2 feet. So in this area, there was about 1.5 foot to depth of snow. But when I looked over to my left, what caught my eye was the vegetation, because all I saw was white. And so I walked over there, and what I saw was all the snow had been pushed out of this spot. And they had created this berm all the way around this spot. And when I looked at it from not standing in it, I could see tracks moving outside this cleared area of all 3 of them. But I could also see their ice tracks inside what snow they didn't get pushed out. And then so I stepped into it. I looked around, make sure that I was not being watched or nothing was coming because I was just I was fascinated with it because what it was. And And I knew immediately what it was once I started looking at it. And so I stepped in it and I looked around. I didn't see my partner. And when I went to the bermed edges, the piled snow all the way around it, it was iced over. All of it was iced over all the way around because they had been laying back on it, and so I hunt elk in the winter. And the coolest thing that you understand about life is how it survives out there. And I used to find all these little melted holes in the snow where the elk would bed down. And I'd get down and I'd feel where their legs were. I'd feel where their body was. And so, and I would pray for that animal because I was hunting that animal. And so I did that to this berm. I got down and I put my hand on it, closed my eyes, and I could feel all the hairs. I could feel the bodies of what laid against it. And it was, like I said, it was all iced over. And I was, I think that I was able to find something like this and that I was worthy of being able to find something like this. And so I started taking the pictures. And then I got to wonder why did they put something right here? And then it started to dawn on me that the only way to get into this spot was where my truck was parked, because this was in the middle of winter and we only had one road plowed open that was hauling timber in and out of there. And none of the roads had been plowed in the area that we were worked. That's why we had to walk in. And as I stood there and I just said, why are they here? Why? Then I saw the log truck go by. And I like, all right, well, they're far enough off the road. The log truck went by, didn't see me standing here. And I wonder, so I put a piece of ribbon up and I snowshoed out to the road and I looked back and I was like, well, if you're walking and you're paying attention to something out there, then yeah, you may be able to see it. But if you're doing 20 to 35, 40 miles an hour, you're not going to know that these three beings, these three forest people, this family unit was living right there. And so I got into the truck and I drove by fast a couple times. And I was like, nope, hey, nobody going to see him. And so, excuse me. So that's why I thought that they had put that there.
That's okay. You got a little bit of a, it's probably what I had. Only I was sick for about 3 months before I got over. I hope that's not what you got.
I've had it for about 3 days now. So,
oh, I hope I didn't jinx you.
But so as I'm watching this, I was like, this is perfect to be able to watch people coming in and out and being able to move freely as they did. Because once I got to that spot, I don't know how we missed all these tracks when we walked in, but they had been there for a long time.
One of the things I liked about your approach to that is when you knew what you found when you come in, but you also looked for the why, which helped you understand them better. Now, being the forest people, was that something that come with your heritage, or is that something that you come to see them as they're over time, not the primate or because people will never agree on what they are, but to be the forest people, how did you come to that conclusion? Was this part of you coming to that conclusion to see the way they think and the way they watch their young and the family, or is it something that was always with you?
That what you just described, yes, because of excuse me.
You're fine. Take your time. A little twisted says, I love how you pay attention to detail, Mel. And Mel, you take your time. Don't stress your voice. We got you, buddy. But you got a good
to be able not only to see the movement if they were and I do this experiment when I go take people out to someplace like the beach or something like that, and they're first timers with me, and I said, watch the movement of the people on the beach, especially the dogs, because you'll see the dogs from an ordinary walking stride. And when somebody throws something or ball, a stick, and they run after it, watch that stride increase. And you get the speed of what that dog is doing. And then when he slows down, when he gets to wherever he's going, and then he picks his speed up, and then he makes these turns and sudden stops. That's how I teach people how to track movement. And that's what I saw out on the ground, was a walking, ordinary, comfortable stride to a longer stride when it had to. And I mean, to have a 6 foot, 7 foot stride and then be very careful approaching and watching those little steps as it's coming up to the tree, and then comfortable move, and then the longer strides to move to the next tree and then slow down. And so that's what amazes me about what I found that day, and that type of detail to go into all of this for somebody to do something like that. That left my head a long time ago.
Well, I bet that was a fascinating day. And it's like Lil Twisted said, I don't know if you got to read it. He said, that is the most observation I've ever heard from anyone. Incredible that you got to see their day of travel and movement. And your perspective of it, you give a lot of insight to it. I mean, to me, I would have been like, well, hot dog, I found tracks, but you look at the why and the personality, and it brings them a very humane and they're flesh and blood. They're living beings trying to survive out there in a world that we encroach on quite often. And I imagine that if they're sitting on the hills watching us, they see us do some pretty stupid stuff sometimes.
Well, yeah.
Bless your heart.
But yeah, so, to finish off the question is how, over the years, when I started out, I didn't know anything about them. I had no idea how many or who they were, or what they even looked like. I was always told as a kid they were monsters. And so, going out wandering around the woods as an adult, you're hoping not to run into a monster. And but as I worked longer and longer in the Forest Service and then with the tribe, the Yakama Nation, then I started learning animal patterns and watching their movement and watching how not to upset them and how to move away from and not be in areas where the mothers and cubs are, because that is the most dangerous situation you could put yourself into. And but also I learned that when you project yourself and tell them who you are, that is the biggest thing of an introduction. Like, hello, my name is Mel Skahan. I'm a forestry worker. I'm only here to do my job. This is what I'm here to do. It may take me one day, it may take me 10 days to get this job done, but I'm not here to hunt you, bother you, or do anything. And so when I announce myself like that, then I feel that they begin to know me.
I do have a question here. It says, what's your thought? I can never say that word. What's your thoughts on the Natantawa? Ron, thanks, Ron. A flesh and blood creature, something supernatural, natural, or a combination of both. Thanks. Do you understand what he's saying there?
Oh yeah, I completely understand it. And when I got into this, it wasn't up until maybe about 5 years ago that the supernatural, paranormal, and then, I don't like using the word woo, but when you become one with yourself and one with where you go and what you do, then you center yourself while you're out there. And when you center yourself and enunciate yourself, because we go out to get away from all of this. And then when we're out there, I always do this exercise of, like I explained earlier, just introducing, going up breathing, getting rid of everything, looking forward to anything that may come from their visits. And so once I started doing that, then the communication of the wood knocking, the whistling, and then anything else that they want to present while they're out to let me know that they're there. I understand it and I respond to it. And I said, I know where you're at. And so I did this exercise with some folks for the first time myself last year. And there were 3 of us sitting in a chair by a fire. And we had just walked this area. And I found where they approached this camping area that we were at. And I said, if we get approached, it's going to be from this spot right here. And so as we're sitting around the fire and we're talking and we're having a good time laughing and everything, I saw an orb, a big, giant red orb that was about 8 feet off the ground in that spot that I pointed out to the girls, that the women that were with me. And I said it went from me to my left, and then it was gone. And so we're talking, and then the gal that was sitting on my right was facing this direction, and she goes, I see bright white, yellowish, look like eyes next to the ground. And I told them, I said, just be comfortable, keep talking like we are now. And so I glanced over there and I looked and I saw him. And I said, yeah, I see him. And so again, you want to separate this from anything else. I says, this is the firelight that is making a reflection of foliage since it's beginning to rain out here. Is it? And then we kept going over these possibilities. I says, we need to eliminate everything. And so I took another look over there and I says, there's no foliage. I could see the foliage from the firelight, but I can't see foliage beyond this certain point. And I said, what these 2 white or flat eyes are, I said, they're beyond that. And I go, there's another set that just appeared right next to it, off to my left. And she goes, I saw that. And so she's looking over there. She's fascinated, and she's like trying to throw everything out there that what the possibilities, and eliminating everything. And the gal that's facing this way didn't get to see anything. And I told her, don't turn around. I go, if you turn around to take a look, then they'll know that we're onto them. I said, just keep talking in an ordinary voice like we are now, and just give out your descriptions, and let's not make them too aware that we noticed them. And then, so the eyes went away, and so I sat back in my chair, and the 2 women were sitting there talking with each other. And I centered myself. I separated myself from the conversation, and I laid back into my chair. And as I was doing that, I thanked them for their visit. And I said that you guys are more than welcome to stay. And we would enjoy your company if you would like, to move around some more to get to know us. And so I'm sitting in the chair and I'm talking and I'm doing breathing. And then the back of my chair got pushed.
Wow.
Got pushed in, and I got moved forward. And there was nobody behind me. The gal off to the right goes, what's going on? And I said, I just got pushed. And she goes, that is so cool. How did you do that? And so I told him, I said, just, center yourself, breathe. And she goes, I want that to have some, all of us started doing that again. And then I believe she got the little touch on the back, and then I got pushed in the back one more time. And so when you, like I said, when you center yourself and make that type of communication, and then want that type of encounter with them, just go along with them. They're nothing to be feared. I've never had a bad encounter with them. If I was out there and I was out there drinking, and if I was out there, tearing up the ground with my ATV, UTV, or shooting up the trees like I've seen many times out there, those are the type of neighbors that I don't even want next to me. And then I'll do everything to shoo them off. And so that's what I tell people. I says, the best introduction that you can have is introducing yourself, your family, your friends, and your intentions while you're out there.
Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot kind of summed it up like this: focusing on not fearing is a task. I don't think they want to scare us, but if we are fainting goats, we don't help the contact. He's got a way with words.
Yeah.
So as time went on and you started going out into, to satisfy your curiosity, because I think even you've kind of shown, even when you have the physical evidence, you're not interested in proving they exist. You're kind of a curious, I want to learn about you and I need to know more about you. So as time went on, you had an incident where, and I listened to so many of your interviews. I believe the lady was in the fire tower and they found the same clan in the area, but they had grown that time.
Yeah, the 3 tracks that I described to you earlier, she found them, or they found her about 4 years later.
Can we go into that unless I'm skipping something significant you want to get out
no,
there?
we can bounce around. I mean, I know you. Yeah, no, it's fine that we can bounce around.
I am. I'm scatterbrained, sir. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. But yeah, this was about 4 years later, and then we used to have 4 fire towers located on the reservation, and then because of maintenance and travel to get out there, a few of them had been removed, so that left us with 2. And the 2 fire towers that we have up there, one of them was located right in the middle of the Yakama Reservation in a forested area. The other one is located on the sage land and further to the east of this one. So the lady Diane, sorry.
You're fine. You take your time.
Diane, who became a really good friend after this incident, started working there. She told her family that she was going to be a lookout for the wildland fire season in the summer months. And then they all told her that she was going to come in contact with Bigfoot. And she was like, oh, yeah, whatever, Bigfoot. I don't believe in Bigfoot. And so she was up there alone. And she would go in the daytime up into the tower, which was located right next to the cabin. And at night, she would come down after her shift and then come down for a few hours, cook something, and then go back up just for one last check. And so during the course of her stay up there, she started hearing these sounds. She started hearing the whoa, the long howls. And then she would hear wood knocks. And then she would hear the whoops, whoop. And never knew what it was. She said she would sit outside her cabin and then she could see down into the lower Yakama Valley. And then she had a police scanner with her and she would hear the police activity. And then she would see the lights of the coming out towards White Swan or moving around the lower valley. And then she would go to bed and she said she would sleep with the window open. And then every great once in a while, she would wake up to this awful smell and didn't know what it was. Never quite seen the tracks yet. And so, she would have her days of working completed and then go down for 3 or 4 days and then come back up. And so over the course of the summer, the gal that was picking her up was asking her questions about, what animals have you seen? What's going on? How you doing? Da, 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 da. And then she goes, well, I got all these weeds growing up here in the front of my cabin and then on the side. Can you guys pull the weeds for me so that I don't trip on them or anything like that when I'm walking up to the tower or coming outside. She said, yeah, we'll talk to somebody and we'll have that done. So she was gone for 3 or 4 days and then came back up. And the gal that picked her up was the one that drops her off. And so and then she noticed that her weeds had been pulled and they had been stacked on the porch. And I mean, it's just, you're not, it was just long grasses is what it was. And she goes, well, thank you for pulling this for me. They go, we didn't bring anybody up. We didn't have enough time. We had this going on, that going on, that going on. We didn't do this. And she goes, well, and then that's when she noticed the tracks for the first time. And then they started walking around and they started seeing these impressions in the, or, not clear tracks, but foot-like impressions. And so they followed them and she goes, do you believe in Bigfoot? And I was like, no. She goes, well, I don't know what they are, but so, off the lady went. And then the sounds started happening again. And then the smells started happening around the cabin. And she would feed an elk an apple because one day she opened her curtain and then there was this big bull elk that was standing in front of the window and it scared her. And so that's when she started putting the apple out to feed him. And then, up in the tower, she would see cats and she would see coyotes. I mean, she saw all types of wildlife while she was up in the tower. And so the next time she got picked up, she made this comment to the person picking her up that said, I would like to meet that big man with the big feet. And so she goes down, comes back up 3 or 4 days later after her weekend. And then the same type of incidences started happening with the howls, this time whistles, and then the wood knocks. So it was increasing the activity for her at night. And so she woke up one morning, was getting ready, and she heard shuffling out in front of the cabin. She figured it was her elk. And when she went to go over to the window, she was like, and she was, like I said, she was great to talk to. And she gave us a lot of, the story that I'm telling you is everything that she has told me. And I try to pay respect to her because she's gone now. And her kids, thank me for sharing her story with everybody. And so she goes to the window and she pops open the blind. So you've got a big bay window here facing to the south. And then at the corner, you got the other bay window. And so at the corner, that's where she went. And she popped open the blind. And then standing there looking up above was a male Sasquatch, dark in color, shoulders, she said, about 7 to 8 feet apart. She said it was huge. And that he was looking up, but when he saw the curtain move, then his attention went from up looking towards the tower of the roof down to her. And then that's when she realized that what was standing in front of her was a Bigfoot forest person. And told us about the flared nostrils, the deep set eyes, the wrinkled skin, the black fingernails, the muscular chest. He was a little bit heavy down in the stomach area. And then his legs were about 5.5 feet long. And he was peppered color, black, brown, white. And she could tell he was a male because she saw his penis. And then as she's staring at him, he doesn't move. He's just staring at her. They're both fixated on each other. She's trying to scream. She's trying to move. She's trying to get away. But she said it felt like it was nailed to the floor. And then it kind of shifted, and then it took a step to the right. And so it did this. And then just as it was doing that, he raised his right arm, and then he went, "Ah! Ah!" and then walked 180 from her. And so that's where she finished the story with us. And this is where my partner's portion of the story picks up, because he had gone up there that day because word got out, and it got out quick. And they wanted to see the bear. They wanted them to track this bear that was going to be bothering people as they visited this cabin. And so when he got up there, he found the track. He found out where it was standing, and then found the big 22-inch track, and then started following it. And then he goes, he says, I only found 1 foot. I couldn't find a right side. I found the clear left, but I could not find a right foot. And he goes, I don't know. But he goes, I followed it to the east, and then it jumped down this cliff, and then it landed, and then it was heavy. And when it landed, it pushed a lot of rock down before it stopped, and then he continued north. And he goes, what's interesting is that when I went to the other side of the cabin, I found out where they walked in. I followed him back, and I found 2 other tracks. And I told him, I says, well, let me take a stab at it, because I wasn't there. I said, let me take a stab at this. I said, at 18 and then 8. And then he goes, well, how'd you know that? And I was like, because I know those 3. And so he goes, well, that 8-inch foot that you're saying is he's now 14.
Wow.
And she goes, she saw the 1, but she didn't see the other 2. And like I said,
that was Dad doing recon again.
Yes, Dad was up there doing recon again. Yep.
Now, you brought up something about the smell, and I know this probably you're the perfect person to ask, because you look at the why. And where do you think the smell comes from? Is it what they eat, or do you think they have a smell? Or because you get that kind of garbage smell or wet dog smell a lot from people. Do you think that's different, or?
Yeah, I mean, they can admit that smell, I believe, and because I've also smelled a floral and a cinnamon smell associated with them, and being followed by one. All I kept picking up was cinnamon. I go, wow, I picked up the cinnamon first, and I kept working, and I kept walking, and it stuck with me, the cinnamon. And there's nothing in our area that would emit cinnamon smell as far as vegetation or trees. And it was strong, and I knew it was them. And so I turned to back behind me, and I let them know that I know you're there, and I know you're following me, but I'm not going to be doing anything other than working. And then the smell went away. I've also picked up the urine smell of them. That was about 5 to 6 inches taller than I was, and I knew it was them, because nothing in the world, nothing in our forest pees up this high.
That's I smelled the odor once, and I was telling you about it in the text, and it was like nose level, there and gone. It like didn't drift. It was like there, gone. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I'll tell you more about that behind the scenes, but it's right on that.
Yeah, and I've picked up that awful garbage, rotten meat smell once before in California, when I was doing some stuff with Bobo Fay and Matt Moneymaker. during the BFR expeditions, the early ones. And we were out for a night, and then we were camping out, and we had made contact with them as far as knowing that we heard them howling, screaming, whooping down into this area. And so we walked back down in there later after everybody else had left. And Bobo's favorite thing to do was cook bacon. And he had like a pound of bacon. And so we were cooking up bacon, putting that smell out there. And I brought my tent down, and they had their tent, and they were right below me by about 75 to about almost 100 feet below me. And I put a audio recorder out with a long microphone, and we had just gone to bed, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got in my sleeping bag and just fell asleep. And I was gone within 12 minutes because I listened to the audio recording, and I was out immediately. And then you heard me rustling around, waking up and moving around, but you could not hear them moving around because I was nothing but synthetic, just awful rubbing sounds going on, trying to be quiet. And then that's when I was laying, and I lifted my arm up, and I was like, God, I stink. Oh man, it was terrible. And then I sniffed everywhere that I could, and I was like, that's not me. Then I was like, oh, we're outside. That was the first time that I'd ever smelled them.
I've always wondered if it was just if something they could control or not, but that's
I think it is. Yes. Yep.
Wow. Now, going back when you were out with, the Moneymaker and, all of those, looking back on your earlier days and now, is your approach to going out to the forest different, trying to approach them or going into their area? I know you said to center yourself. Is that something you've always done, or do you?
No. Yeah, I learned from my elders a long time ago that if you're out hunting them like the way you do, trying to attract them, you're never going to get anywhere. And that's what I went outside the Yakama Reservation because everybody that I talked to would always say, no, don't. And they would not give me any answers of what was happening to me. So I sought an outside source, which was the BFRO. And then they contacted me, and I gave them my story. And then they invited me out after I shared my information with them. And the whole thing of being part of their organization was to learn what was going on, their experiences. And that's exactly what I picked up on after a few years of being around. I would take a bunch of reports that they had within Washington State, and I would go out and meet these people and then ask them questions and everything. And that's how I learned more that the items, the things, the events that were happening to me were similar to everybody else out there. And so when I was started with the expeditions with the BFRO, it was all about attracting them out there using pheromone chips, wood knocking, calling. I mean, everything that as a native person, as a Yakama person was told not to do. We're not supposed to whistle at night because that brings in the spirits. We're not supposed to have negative thoughts while we're out there because that also brings in them. And then moving around, stay inside, don't move around, stay inside because it's their time. So everything that I was told by my elders, it was opposite what the BFRO was doing at that time, and I was doing as well.
Now you had over, I think, 1,200 stories from off of. How are the stories on the reservation different from the stories that you get outside of your culture and your heritage? Like someone like me in the mountains, kind of away from the. Is there a difference?
Oh no, they're all similar. It's just that I don't like separating cultures because
Okay.
it's just what happens to one person inside the reservation was also happening to other people outside the reservation. Let's say a logger was out driving and bringing a load down, and then he saw something cross the road. Well, a logger within Washington State would see similarities, the same thing. And so I don't like to involve culture and have that type of separation, because it all happens to us no matter what. I mean, it could be white, brown, clear. I mean, anything. And it happens to us as a whole.
Okay, so let me ask you this way. Do you think that being on a reservation, there's more open land and not as much like traffic, like a heavy interstate or a really big populated city? So, I mean, you think it's more of an uncontaminated land to have more, that would open up more encounters. So we'll put it that way.
Okay. So 1.2 million acres is the size of the Yakama Reservation, located in central Washington. And then its boundaries include Mount Adams on the west, the Goat Rocks Wilderness on the northwest, and then you've got the Tieton, or the Yakama River, the Klickitat River, and it's an all-closed reservation, meaning you have to be an enrolled member in order to go into the forested or to the backcountry areas away from the valley floors, the populated areas. So the way I always looked at it is like I had 750,000 acres of research area to myself, because it was a closed area. So that made it special to me, that there was nobody else out there trying to
contaminated area,
doing these luring outings, and then getting, and of course you had the workers, the enrolled members out there that were taught different things, were told different stories, but they pretty much well abided by the rules that you don't do a lot of these things. And then they were having their encounters. The people that were having the negative encounters were the people that were harassing them, the people that were out there being obnoxious. And those were the people, when they would come to me, they said, I would always ask, "What were you doing?" And they said, "Well, we were out there doing this." And I was like, "Okay." But I wasn't letting anybody know about the research that I was saving to show, as they were telling. I said, "All right," and I would go to myself, "I already know what happened," as they were going along, telling me everything. And another thing that I collected was, down, the Yakama Valley, the lower Yakama Valley is a huge agriculture area, hops, onions. I mean, we apples, cherries. I mean, it's a plethora of food, in the springtime all the way until late fall. And so when people would have encounters down on the valley floor out of the forested areas, I would listen to them, how late they were out there, why they were there, what were you doing? But my biggest thing, what I started keying on, was what direction did it take off? Because I needed to know, were they moving down at that time, or were they getting ready to move out because the sun was about ready to come up and they had to get to the protected areas? And so after a while, they learned, anytime an event after, let's say, 1 a.m. happened, they were moving away from the forest or the agricultural floor back up into the hills. But anywhere from dark time before midnight, they were seen moving down to feed.
That's good observation. Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot said, and you pretty much said this, "I would not go out with a lot of ego. I think that could be dangerous." Pretty much just some what you just said. And there was another question here, and I guess it comes from all the lore and the or the folklore and the the strangeness that can happen out on reservations. They want to know if you ever seen anything like a werewolf or a dog man or anything like that.
Oh boy, I never. How scared do you guys really want me to get?
Let's go. Let's roll deep, brother. Let's roll deep.
Well, in my time, and like everybody else, I've lost family members. Everybody's lost family members. One's closest to us, and friends, and before a lot of my family's death, there were events that would happen to them, like spirits coming to them to let them know that it was their time. And the biggest one was my aunt. And she, before her passing, was having these awful things happening to her, and eventually found out that she was probably taking before her time. And
Oh, goodness.
what had happened was that before she had passed, she would see these cloaked figures move. Like say she was out visiting, and when she was returning home at night, they would see them cross the road. And these were, like I said, they were not human shaped, but they were like wearing long capes or ragged clothes as they moved through, and then it was blowing behind them. And one night, they arrived home, and her daughter and her fiance were in the living room, and she was in her room, and then she started screaming. And when they got up to go into the back to her room, they saw her bouncing up and down on her bed. She was laying down at the time, and she wasn't the one that was causing the bouncing. Something inside the room was moving her up and down. And so the visitations started to increase for her just before her passing. And so when people start talking to me about how and what do I feel about those types of events, is I totally believe them. That there are things that we don't know or don't realize that we know are out there that aren't out there to harm us, but to take us, to warn us that something is going to happen to you. And it's up to us to change our thought processes to be able to try to correct that if that's at all possible. And but in these events, I've seen it happen to my great grandfather as well. And so to advance ourselves to this next level, my niece, who at the time was 8 years old, she had a gift to be able to see the people that have passed, and trying to learn this ability that she had. She called it a curse. And I had an opportunity to meet with a couple of other folks like her to be able to change her thought process about not being a curse, but a gift, and to be able to hone it, to handle it, and shut it off if necessary. And one event, I was asked to do a Bigfoot expedition or outing, a few hour outing out on a reservation way back out of the way of the populated area. And they also were paranormal investigators. And I don't think much of paranormal investigators, because they're just out there to provoke, just like the Sasquatch people that I don't like to be around anymore, to provoke them, to upset them, to have things happen to you. So I told him, I said, I want to see the area. And I took my niece out there and we walked. And so he showed us where he wanted this event to happen. And there were, I said, yeah, we can make this work. And so I told him after, I said, we'll be back. And he left. And then Samantha and I said, I don't like being in an area that I don't know. So we're going to walk down there. And she goes, Uncle, she doesn't want us at the house. And this house that they were going to do. And this house was built in the late 1800s. And it was plastered, really thin slats. I mean, it was a really, really, really old house. And she goes, she knows that these people are coming back. And she's going to do everything possible to chase these people out. And I said, okay. I go, who is she? She goes, she's a woman that had been here for a very short while. And her husband was here with her, but then he had to leave and he never returned. And she was pregnant at the time. And she had the baby and became lonely. And the baby passed. And then she committed suicide. She hung herself in the building. And so Samantha was sharing a lot of detail with me about the house, the land, the people there.
The energy.
And she goes, she knows we're coming back. And I said, okay. So I said, all right, well, let's not let anybody else know what we got, what's going on here. We'll go through the event and then we'll just watch out and then give everybody the warning that it's time to go. And so we came back around 9 o'clock at night after it started getting dark. Did the Bigfoot thing for a couple hours and then it wanted to go to the house. So Samantha and I stayed out of the house. We gathered outside and there were like about 10 to 11 of them. And so we stayed outside because she said that she's mad and said, okay, well, we're going to stay away. So they had their little gadgets and they had their cameras and everything. And then they started walking towards the house. And a lady broke away from them and came back towards us and asked us why we weren't going in. I said, well, there's somebody in the house that doesn't want us here. And so we're staying away from her. And she goes, what do you mean? And she goes, well, if you're more than welcome to sit here and, enjoy the play-by-play if you want. And so she goes, yeah, I'm not into this. She goes, this doesn't feel right. So she's sitting next to us and then we're talking outside. Then you can see the flashes going off from everybody. And then you can hear everybody talking. And then she goes, there's a girl that's going to break away from that group and go into this room. And this is when it's going to happen. This is what Samantha's telling us. And so just a few seconds after she said that, we saw the flash and then we heard the scream from the girl. And then everybody went running into this little area and they were trying to calm her down and ask her what she saw. And then she goes, I saw a ghost or I saw something. We really couldn't hear what was going on. And then I go, was that it? And then Samantha goes, yep, that was the first one. She goes, she's going to do it again. And I said, okay. She goes, after this, after they all break up again, there's a guy. She was specific whether it was going to be a male or female that was going, these events that were going to happen to them. And so she goes, there's this man that's going to walk outside and he's going to walk over to that fence line and he's going to walk that direction away from the house. And so we're talking amongst each other and the girl was like, how do you know this? And I was like, well, just watch. And so eventually a guy comes walking out of the house. I go, is that him? She goes, yep. So he walks to the fence line and he starts walking away. She goes, what's going on? She goes, oh, she's going to scare him. And So the flashes are going off in the house. People are talking, and we're watching this guy move through the open field down along the fence line. And next thing you know, he just screams out, "Ah, it's Bigfoot! It's Bigfoot! Ah!" And he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and then everybody stops what they're doing in the house, and they go running out. And he's running back to everybody, back towards us, towards the house. And then he catches up to everybody, and he's like, "Oh, what's going on?" He goes, "It's Bigfoot. He's over there. I saw him." And it was the lady. The lady had done the same thing that she had done to or she had done to the girl inside. She did the same thing to the man. And so then they called it an evening after that. And so, when people ask if I believe in other things, I say yes, I definitely do, because I've experienced them. Uh-oh. Are you still there?
I'm muted.
I thought it was me.
Yeah, they have to tell me. Like I said, I'm scatterbrained. You had an event where you had hair, and over the time you put, kind of filed the hair away and everything, but it was significant to you because you knew what it meant to you and everything. And this kind of ties into what you just talked about. You had actually went to a house and there was some negative energy there, and something happened during that you connected to what you believe was the forest people.
Yes.
And that confirmed your belief in that they are forest people and that you're on the right track with them. Would you like to go into that?
Yeah. There was I was working in the area of the reservation, and there were two co-workers with me. And as we were close to the end of our day, we were walking back down towards the road off this ridge line. And I looked off to the right, and I saw this huge donut-looking thing. And I went walking over to it, and it was a giant bird's nest. It looked like, and it was in the shape of a donut. And I got to looking at it, and I said, "I know what made this." And two coworkers came over, and they go, "What do you mean?" I go, "Look how everything in this nest has been woven. It's not been scraped together." And I said, "It built it to its size, because the hillside was like this. And so it built up the bottom so that the donut was level." So I went and jumped in it, and I went to kick my legs. I couldn't touch the ground. I was about a foot and a half when touching the ground. That's how much taller this was on the slope. And so I incorporated a wooden log next to it, and like an arm stand. And they go, "What built it?" I said, "Bigfoot built this nest." And then I started looking around, and I was like, there's hairs in this too. So I made a paper folder, and I plucked the hairs off of two different locations, out of the nest and out of the little wooden log, or the wooden log, decayed log. And I put them in my pocket, and then they go, "Well, what's it doing here?" And as I'm looking around, I said, "There's this window down at the main road down below where we're parked." I go, "It's got a perfect window to be able to see traffic going in and going out, and letting all the other ones around here know that the coast is clear, or somebody's driving up the road." And I go, "It's a perfect sentry spot." And so we walked out of there, and fast forward, I told people about the hairs, and And then, they came and saw me, and I showed them the hairs. They said, "Well, you should have them tested." I said, "Yeah, I thought about it, but I know I know where these hairs came from. I know who the person is." And I said, "I don't need to have them tested." He said, "Well, no, maybe you should have them tested." And I was like, "No, I'm good. I already know." And so fast forward to this event I attended, and a little girl in the house was being bothered by a spirit. And they tried many ways of getting this little girl out. And this little girl was to the point where she was going to commit suicide. And so they had to do things, get more people in here to try to get this spirit out, or just move out. Well, they brought in this man from the Oklahoma area, and he brought his family with him. And he had a different style from what I'm used to, because the two religions that are on the reservation, they use bells, or they use chanting or singing to prey on you, candles, everything to make everything positive energy around you. And but those didn't work. And so when this man came in, he had people black out the windows. He said that we were going to cut the electricity, that everybody was going to be in the room, and then there was an offering of food and gifts for the attendees. So that's how we pay people that are in attendance. And so he says it's going to be really dark in here. There's not going to be any electricity, and there's going to be people that have passed on that are going to come visit you. Don't be alarmed. They're just here to help. I'm not here to drive the spirit out. We're here bringing them people from the outside to help guide him out. And so they may want to make contact with you. Don't be alarmed. And so with those instructions, cut the electricity, sitting on the floor. I'm sitting on the floor, legs crossed, back against the wall. Two people on the other side of me with everybody else around the living room. And the song starts, and it's a nice, calming song. And it's dark. And then he finishes that song. And then he starts the second song, which is a bit more loud. It's louder, and it's also higher pitched. And as I'm sitting there, pitch black, no light, just vibration, or I hear something from the other side of the room, and it's a vibration that is emitted from him, and it's coming through the floor, and it's this, and I can, if you could see it, if I could describe it as seeing it, yes, because that's the only way that, the hearing would pick it up. But the sight, or knowing where that was, as you could see and hear this single row of vibration coming at you. And then I felt it in my legs. And then it went underneath me, and then into the wall behind me, and then went up the wall into the ceiling, and then it was gone. And I'm freaking out, and I'm like, what is going on here? I've never experienced anything like this. And I leaned over to the gal next to me, and I was like, were the walls vibrating? She goes, oh yeah, it was vibrating. There was a vibration in here. And I was like, wow. All right. And so I'm like, this. So the third song starts, and it's louder, and the pitch, and then his family starts in, and the singing is going on, and it's almost deafening. And then as I'm sitting there, my arms crossed, and I'm listening to everything, I didn't know what to expect after the vibration of the previous song. I'm sitting there, and my eyes are closed, and I'm listening, and then I hear in the back room down the hallway, I hear this, whoa. And I went, no. I go, it can't be. I go, I've heard that before. I know I've heard that. And so I project out loud, if you are who I think you are, you'll whoop for me. And I'm sitting there, and then I hear, whoop, and I'm like, my body just sank. Because I was like, how, why, what? And so I knew what was back there. How it was back there, I don't know. And then I hear this boom, boom, boom. And it's coming closer. And it's leaving the back room, walking down the hallway. Boom, boom. And then he gets into the living room. And then boom, boom. And next thing you know, I hear him jumping to the beat of the drum. And he's opposite side of me. And I hear him jumping, boom, 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 to the drum, to the singing. And then he starts either talking really loud or yelling. And I've never been full out yelled at by a Sasquatch to where I need to go like this and cover my ears to protect them. But I hear this, boom, 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 boom. And he leaves the hallway area and he's boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. And he's moving around all over the place. And he's right over the top of me. And he's boom, boom, boom. And the song is still going, and he's still singing, or yelling, or talking, and he's letting me have it. I mean, he's just right in front of me, boom, boom, and then he's moving around again, boom, boom, and as the song ends, he ends, and I can hear him end right at the beginning of the hallway, and then boom, boom. I can hear him walking down the hallway into the back room again. And then when the song was over, he was gone. And then the final song came on, and it was a more calming song. And then after that, the lights came on. Somebody went into the back room to turn the lights on, and everybody's talking to each other. And you could hear the whispering and everything. And the lady was sitting next to me. She goes, "Why'd you touch me? Why were you whispering in my ear?" And I was like, "It wasn't me. It was not me."
Wow.
And then the guys that were over here on this side, they weren't saying anything, but I could hear everybody talking. And then eventually the medicine man started going around the room saying, you had. And then he got to me and he goes, "You, on the other hand, have something attached to you that you shouldn't have. You do things that you shouldn't be doing." And he says, "You collected something that you should not have collected, and it wants it back." And then somebody over here goes, "He's got hair." And I'm like, I didn't know it. 90% of these people, but the guy that said that, I definitely didn't know him. And so I was like, "Yeah, I do have hair." So he goes, "What you do now to correct this, you need to come see me, and I'll give you the steps and return and make right what you have done wrong." So, okay. So I met him after that, and he gave me the steps. He gave me the ceremony that I needed to perform out there, and then offer back the hair that I've taken from the one. And so it took me a couple of weeks to gather everything, because it was something I had to wait for somebody to do for me. But I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell anybody anything. He goes, "Once you get all these and you go out there to do it, you just walk out the door. Don't tell anybody where you're going, and then you do this. And after this, you'll not be ignorant in your ways. You'll be everything that I've holds you now will change you. And if you can still decide to go back, or if you do go back to your ways, then it will not be good for you, basically. And so I said, okay. So I went, got everything, walked out the house, and then went to the spot, hiked back down into the area, and did the ceremony. And now I understand when I walk the woods, I would see these pieces of fabric wrapped around these trees, and no reason why until that day. Now my flag is out there, and I know why. And so I finished up my little ceremony that I did, and then I put the hairs, and then he didn't tell me to do this, but I did it. And I said, I've done everything that you want me to. I've given back what you wanted, and are we okay? And like I said, I projected that out, and then from down the hillside below me, I got the long howl, the whoa, and I put my hands up and then put my backpack on, and I said, I don't speak Sasquatch, but I'm pretty sure we're okay.
We're good.
That's the event that has changed me for not doing what I've done in the past.
That's pretty deep and incredible. Lavani says something, and I agree with her, because if you let me get that wrong. If she said that's why she wouldn't take a sample if she's seen one. I agree with her 100%. I've said it before. I don't care if I ever had the greatest tangible evidence I could put my hands on. There's no way in the world that I would share, or it's not worth it to me. So I think wild things should stay wild, and I think sometimes if you love something, you just let it be and let it be wild. That's true freedom.
Yeah.
Just my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, do I love to talk about Bigfoot or forest people? Is there a difference between using the term Bigfoot or forest people? Do you think there's a difference there, or do you think one's tribal? Do you think one's Bigfoot? When I hear Bigfoot, I think creature.
Right.
When I hear forest friends, I think people.
Right. A clan. Yeah. A group.
So, yeah. Somebody doing recon to get their hair back because they want to keep their family going and not be contaminated by humans. So I guess that's a different recon, huh?
Sorry. But yes, the similarities, and I've been quoted this once, and some people take this out of context, is that what I meant when I said this is that they are the purest form of human still on this earth. And what I mean by that is every technology, all this what you want to call advancement for us has been a deterrent, and us losing everything that we have been taught to do, walk, our ancestors, and the distractions that we have now have taken us away from everything. But they live in the purest form without those distractions to be able to make those contacts. And
the purest form of freedom.
Yes, and to be able to center themselves and be able to communicate with us in the fashion when we start narrowing and getting away from all this. And so that's what I mean by that.
I think that's absolutely correct. Lavani would like to know your thoughts about gifting items, and have a few more questions. You want to take a minute and kind of get your voice together?
No, I've got my lozenges here. So, but the gifting items, I'm part. I have a few people that have been working with me, um, sharing their gifting, and one guy in particular, Legacy Discoveries here in Idaho, northern Idaho. I met him at a conference that we were speaking at, and he was telling me about all the gifting that he'd been doing and the chalkboard and everything. And you've got to look at this as something that they're sharing information with you, and if you're trying to make connection with them, introduce yourselves, introduce your family, because they know your family inside your house. Once you have this home visits consistently, they know who you are, they know everything about you. And so, and it's us trying to learn them in different regions, their likes, their dislikes, because not everybody likes the same thing as you would, not have the same beliefs or the same foods that you like. And so an item that was left for him was a hair, and it was placed underneath the rock at his gifting table. And he told me about it. And when I met him at the conference, we met privately, three of us, and my wife was right next to me. And we were talking, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, here's the hair," and it was in a small glass vial. And so he handed it over to me, and I had it in this hand, and I'm looking at it, turning it and everything. And then I went to grab it with my left hand and then turn it, not open it, so I could see inside, because I could see it perfectly. And when I made this motion like this, it zapped me.
Wow.
It zapped me and it burned me. And then I screamed out, yelled out, "Ah, ow!" And I was going like this. And then I handed it back to him. And then my wife made the comment, "You haven't learned, have you? You're not supposed to do that stuff." And I was like,
Smart woman.
and so we're talking, and he's got the vial in his hand, and he goes, "This is hot. This is really, really almost hot to the touch." And I said, "Yeah." I go, "Don't." I said, "They gave you this item. You don't." I said, "It's fine that you share it, but don't let anybody else handle it. It's yours." And
Wow.
so, and then after a while, it started cooling down. But you know, even though I learned my lesson, yes, I've learned my lesson.
Do you think they would get offended if they gifted you and you didn't get it? You didn't understand it was a gift.
Well, I don't do gifting myself. I mean, I leave the tobacco offerings for visits and everything else, but we'll leave stuff outside for them as a group. But I'm not the one that does it. My when I go out with people now, I'm the one that is always going around the camping area and saying they're going to come in from over here. If anything happens, they're going to be over here. If anything happens, it's going to be over here. That's the first thing that I do when I go to camping spots, new areas, is that I look for the areas of their approach, and then I will recognize when I start hearing the sounds of, yeah, it's them.
Um, I asked that because of what I was telling you earlier about the snake skin, but I'll tell you more detail about that later. I do have a question. It says, what is his opinion on Bigfoot talking telepathically? It is possible, and yes, how can we be sure it's a Bigfoot, not some other entity disguising as a Bigfoot? That would go with being the meditation
Right,
you listen to.
right, yeah, because we were shooting I don't know why they call it a sizzle reel, but we were shooting a sizzle reel for a potential pilot for a Bigfoot program last year in the Columbia River Gorge. And I have a friend, and she's a, a medium Reiki person, telepath. I mean, very sensitive person. And so I invited her along, and because I didn't want this to be another Finding Bigfoot, taking people out looking for this, telling them, oh yeah, da, 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 da. No, we wanted we wanted to up the ante a little bit and get into this paranormal, psychic ability, telepathic talking, everything. And so she showed up, and we were about ready to leave for the area, and she didn't know where we were going. And she pulls me aside. She goes, he knows we're coming. I said, okay. Yeah. I go, yeah. I go, who is it? She goes, well, he's the one that has been seen a lot around the property. And he does have others there. And she started telling me about everything that was about the property. And so we get into the vehicles, camera crew, sound people. I mean, it was, if you've ever been part of Hollywood, I don't recommend it, because it's a different take. You have to do everything 4 or 5 different times from different angles, and you've got to be really, really quiet. And so we're driving out there, and we get to the property. And as we're pulling in and then getting ready to go in, she goes, you see that tree over there? And I was like, yes. She goes, there's a lot of energy coming out of that tree. She goes, that's what attracts them to this property. Is that? She goes, there's a little one that comes in. They come in from over here, and then they walk through the field, and he goes up into the tree, plays in it, climbs it, runs around it, and then mom comes in behind and is watching out for him while he's doing all this. And then he ran to the edge of the property over to the tree line, and he's looking up there. And then he comes back, and then he goes up into the tree again, and then you hear this growling grunt, and it's the dad. He's back over here watching for people coming up the road, and then the house on the property. And then they leave, and then they go back into the trees. And I was like, wow, cool. You know, that's she saw this. And so the camera crews are following the lead person around. And then we go back up to the other house and find out that the mom is living on the property in this bigger house. And then she's out on the porch, and she's asking us some questions about why we're there and everything. And so we told her. And then I go, have you ever seen Bigfoot on your property? And then you see her just scoot back and go into her house. And she just stays there for a little bit. And then she comes walking out, and then she goes, you see that tree right over there? And it's the same tree that she pointed out on her way in. She goes, there was a little one that came out, and then everything that I just told you, she had said what she saw 2 days before that.
I'm on mute again. Wow. So I know we're talking about them talking to you, what some people call mind speak, but something stands out on what you said, how dad is always on guard, how dad is always looking out. It's kind of, you respect their freedom, because that's the true kind of being free. But is it really free that you're always having to watch out for the bad things humans can do?
Well, if you know your area, yes. No, it's not bad. If you know the area, if you're new to the area and don't know where everything human made, every road, every camping area, every piece of garbage that is left out there, an abandoned car, they're marked. They mark those so that they know human activity has been there. And so once you learned your area, then you have that freedom to move about. And one thing about being in a quiet area, the forested areas, is that you can hear vehicles coming in, 2,
Mhm.
3, 4, and depending on if you're on a ridge line, or you can hear everybody coming in. So are they afraid? Not necessarily. They know the roads, they know everything about their areas, so they can live comfortably and not have that fear of being bothered.
You had a sighting where you seen it running across the field. You want to go into that? I know you've been talking a lot, and I don't want to keep you much longer because I don't want your voice to
Oh,
wear
yeah.
out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've got playful stories. I've got coworkers that have experienced them for the first time. I mean, there's so many things that have happened during my forestry career working with other folks. But the sighting that I had was we were working up in the reservation, and a coworker that was with me, he had been sharing with me over time the number of encounters that he had while he worked there. And I mean, just humorous things that, happened to him, that the way he described his running away from him and trying to get back to the vehicle. So we're both driving. I'm driving, and he's the passenger. And this is right around this is right around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're trying to find an area to get to so that we can, the very next day, safely get down to our work spot. And as I'm driving, he looks at me and he goes, "There's something back there." And I was like, what is it? He goes, I don't want to say. I said, "What was it?" He goes, "I don't know." So I put the truck in reverse, and I'm looking through the mirrors so I don't hit anything backing up. And so he's looking around too. And then I finally turned to my left to make sure I'm not going to hit anything. And then I hear him go, "There it goes." And so I looked over on his side, and what he initially saw was an arm extended out on a ponderosa pine tree, fully extended out, and it was standing right next to it. And when we came back into view of it, when he said, "There it goes," that's when it dropped its arm and then turned to its left and then started to walk and then eventually run away from us. And as it started this way and then turned to go this direction, that's when I jumped up on top of the truck to get a better view of it. And then I saw the shoulder movement, dark black hair, the fittest. I mean, if Sasquatch or big forest people had 6-packs, this guy had an 18-pack. I mean, he was muscular. And I could see the muscle movement as he was running away. And then when he turned, then you could see the kind of the small profile of the face really quick before it was out of view. I used to say disappear, but people was like, "It vanished in front of you." So I had to figure a new way of saying it. it was out of sight. And then that's when I was like, "Oh, I had a camera, but it was in my vest behind me." So I grabbed that and I started tracking it. And I saw the where it had been standing, and then its shuffling of the feet to turn to its left, and then the stride that started out at 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, a 12-foot stride on a full run. And I'm like, wow,
Like
this
a dog on the beach.
is impressive. Yes. like a dog on the beach. Yeah, you can see the shuffling and then the walk. And these were just impressions in the forest litter that I was seeing, and not the actual track. As a hunter, I always have ribbon with me, and I put that down of each track that I found, and that's how I was doing the measurements. And then when he finally ended up out of our view, not his full run yet, he was shooting anywhere from 12 to 13 foot on his stride.
Wow.
And so that was the one that I had seen. And we sat there. He eventually caught up to me, and I was sitting on a log overlooking the hillside that it went down. And then he goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know, just sitting here waiting for the sound or whatever." And then we went back to the truck. So the next day, the spot that we were looking for, we found it. And we drove by the sighting area again. It wasn't there. So we got out to the spot, and then we geared up and started walking down. And we had over a mile to walk down this steep slope. And, as a forestry worker, you get tired of going back up. So we were hoping that by the end of the day, we'd find somebody at the bottom to pick us up and take us back to the truck. So we're at this rock outcropping, talus slope. And my partner picks up this rock, same person, picks this rock up, and he rolls it down the hill. And, it's about 75% slope, so really steep. So we're watching the rock bounce back and forth. And then I said, "Hey, there's something down there." And what I saw was something just quickly move like this. And I was like, "There's something down there." And so we picked up another rock, and then he rolled that threw it down the hill. And I was looking at that spot, and I didn't see it. I said, "I'm going to go take a look and see what that is." And so I walked down there and found the spot that it had been standing. It was all rocking, didn't find anything. But as I continued down the hill, then that's when I found the impressions in the ground as it took off. It broke branches on the way down, dug fir branches, small ones. But its stride going downhill was 9 feet. And then as the heel hit the dirt, it slid about 5 to 6 feet every time. And then you just saw that in every heel strike that it had as it was running full bore down the hill. I've seen elk and everything else run down the hill.
Wow.
And this guy, he wanted out of there. And then he turned to his left, and then I quit tracking him. And then I walked back up because I couldn't see my partner anymore. And then when I got up to the spot where I could see him, then I seen him running across the hillside like that, and then the rock was tumbling down, and he come running down towards me. And then he goes, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "No, I didn't hear anything." He goes, I go, "I saw the rock that you kicked loose." And he goes, "I didn't kick that rock loose. That rock was thrown at me." I was like, "What?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I heard this. Wah! Wah!" And then I turned to look up, and then I saw this rock. He said it wasn't rolling down the hill. He said it had an arc to it, and it landed about 8 feet off to his left. And he goes, "Then that's when I started running down towards you."
Of course.
Yeah.
So all the observations you've done, and like I said, I like you because you give a different perspective. You look at the why. Why is this built this way? What vantage point are they seeing? What's the why here? And I really like that. And it's just like when you saw the 3 tracks, and Dad was doing recon, Mom was watching the kid was running around. You got that from all of these tracks. But what else have you, through your time, and especially being a tracker, especially someone that reads the forest, especially someone that's come across so many bedding sites, what are we missing? What is something that you have observed out there that you don't hear the average person come to the conclusion or get about the forest people?
They, excuse me, they forget that once they turn in for the night, that's not it. They come around. And when they come around, I always thought, when they bring the little ones, this is a teaching opportunity on how to be approached, how to approach a camp. Learning, let's just say a father teaching his kid how to hunt, to be stealthy, to be
Mhm.
quiet, to use the wind, to, mask your scent, to do whatever it is to bring home food. They're doing the same thing when they bring their young in to show them how to approach a camp, to know how many people are there, to gather all this information as they move in. And that's what I always thought that they have done, because we've had incidences, my wife and I, where we've had them, you could actually see a large 8-9 foot shadow on the tent approach, stop, and stand there for 15 to 30 minutes, and then take another step. Stand there for 20 to 30 minutes, and then take another step. So when people are sound asleep, that's when they like to come in. And I picked this up because my wife, women are more sensitive to hearing, because they're the nurturers. That when their child is upset or in another room down the hall, and they hear the little whining, they pick up on that more than the man that's just like. And so you go up, and you're fully aware and awake, because that's the way, the separation between male and female. So my wife could hear just that, and then snap awake, grab my arm, say, and point to the direction. And so we watched this male one time, and then he checked on us to see if we were awake. So we smacked the top of the tent, and I was like, and I'm listening to him, and over at our camping tent, we have magnet enclosures, or doors, or a screen door. And we have 2 of them. And then we heard this click, 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 click. And then we heard click, 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 click. Click, 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 click. They were playing with the magnets. Something that's ordinary to us. They don't, they've never experienced before. And so we knew that there were 3 there, because there was another one playing with the other side. Click, 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 click. And that went on for 40 minutes. I mean, it went on for a while.
Wow.
And then when you talk to them, if you know they're outside, and we always announce when we're leaving the tent, I have to go to the bathroom. I'm gonna be coming out here pretty soon. And so I always announce that, not to frighten them or scare them, and then open the door, and then go out, go to the bathroom, come back in, and let them know, okay, I'm in. You guys can come back now. And then sit there and lay there and wait for him to come back. And the same thing that I described earlier with the male, up to 45 minutes to an hour. And then click, 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 click. And they were just having fun. So be more alert in your tent to the sounds that are out there, because that slight little, or the whistle that you may mistake for something else, it's them.
What do you think when you hear? What do you think the bluff charges are about? The breaking the trees and the limbs and just stopping short of the wood line. What do you think the charges are about?
I got a story for everything.
Oh, I'm gonna give you the screen for a moment. I got to let my kitten out of her cage, but go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay. So we were on the Olympic Peninsula, and there were three of us. Well, there was a group of us along Highway 101, and this was a BFRO expedition. And that night's operation, they wanted everybody a mile apart on Highway 101, sitting in the vehicles and make themselves approachable by a Sasquatch, because he gets stories of them coming up to people in their cars. So we'd been out there for a while, and I got tired of sitting in the car with 4 or 5 other guys, and so I said, I'm going for a walk. So I go for a walk, and then I go, does anybody want to come with me? A gentleman comes over to me and says, yeah, I'll go with you. So we start walking, and he goes, Mel, what are we doing? And I was like, 2 guys stranded alongside the road, got to get home. I said, I mean, we're not doing anything other than trying to go home. He goes, are we being quiet? I said, nope, just keep talking like you and I are now. We don't want to be stealthy. We're not hunting them. We're not doing anything. So we're walking and talking, and then I get this. And he was on the right side of me when this happened, and that's where the sound came from. And it was directed right at me, because it went right through me, and I was like, oh. I go, did you just feel that? Not only did I hear it, I felt it. He goes, no. He goes, I didn't hear anything. He goes, what was it? And I go, there's one over here on the right side of the road. I said, let's just keep walking. So we radioed ahead and let them know we had made contact with something. And so we were going to walk past them to see whatever was out there was going to follow us. And it never did. So we make it back, and I'm telling everybody what had just happened. And I said, I'm going back up. I'm going back in there. Does anybody want to go with me? And the guy goes, that walk with me, he goes, I'll walk with you. And he let me know that he was an airline pilot, so his hearing was not very well. And he didn't hear it the first time. If we go back up in there, what makes him think he's going to hear it the second time? And I was like, no. I want somebody. I just kept saying, I want somebody else. And finally somebody volunteered. And so 3 of us start walking back up there, and we're talking. And I go, now there's 3 of us walking. And I said, same thing, broke down along the road trying to get home. And so we're approaching the area. I said, Steve, on your left-hand side, this is where the sound came from right here. We're approaching it. I go, if it makes the sound, we'll just keep walking. And I go, if it doesn't make the sound, I said, there's a road, a Forest Service road up to the left, and we'll go down that road. And so we walk by it, and nothing. So we go up to the forest road, and then we start talking about it. It's still dark out. The moon is starting to come up over the horizon. And then he goes, well, what are we going to do now? And I was like, I don't know. Let me go let out a call. And I retired this call after that, because I thought what happened when this was made caused this issue. And so I get ahead of them, and I've heard this on the reservation, and I've only heard it like maybe once or twice. And so I walked up ahead of him, and then I went, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," and I mean loud. And so we're listening. We have a Gen 3 monocular, and we have a Gen 2 night vision monocular with us. And we had a thermal in the group, but it was like 15 miles back at camp. And when I walked back to them, they're scanning. We didn't hear anything. So I said, let's walk up here a little bit, and I'll do it again. And so I let the second one out. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And then that's when the woods came alive. What was out there was up on this ridge knoll. And then you heard this snap, 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 snap. And you could tell that it was running towards us. And it was not quiet. You could hear it running, like pushing trees down, almost that loud. Snap, 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 boom, 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 snap, snap, snap. And this is the first time that I was actually really scared. Even though there were three of us, we had ability to see it if it did come out, because we were in a riparian area where there was a stream or a little creek that went underneath the road. Behind us had been logged, no trees, but over on this side had been protected as a wildlife island. So none of the trees had been cut up over here. And that's where it originated from. So you could hear it just snap, snap, just running down the hill. And then you could hear it running towards us. And like I said, two other guys with me. And I grabbed them because they were separated from me. And I was protecting myself in case it came out. And I put those two guys together as a little human shield in front of me. And I'm not afraid to admit this because it happened. They didn't know what was going on. And so when I grabbed them and put them right here, and then I got in between them, and I said, it's over there, it's right there. And then you can hear it when it stopped right at that timberline edge. And you can hear the and you can hear it breathing, and they're looking all over. And I said, it's right there, and I'm backing away from them. I said, it's right over there. And they were looking. And then you heard a car coming from southbound, northbound on Highway 101. And then you heard snap, snap. And then it started walking away from us. And then when the car got closer to us, then it was out away from us.
On the ridge.
Yeah.
I heard they like the high ground. Michael X said, what kind of call was that supposed to be? So the what not to do.
What not to do. Yes, the call that I don't use anymore.
Let's see. Riley said, if I hear a snap in the woods, I'm going to bolt out. Left my ex stranded there last time. I forgot she was with me. She was mad. Fair game. If you guys have any closing questions, we've had them on for 2 hours. I'm grateful for your time, by the way, Mel.
Oh, wow.
So go ahead and get the questions out if you have any. While we're going to give them a few minutes if they have anything. Out of all of your years of experience, if you could get one message out or something you wanted people to know that, or how you feel personally that your research has led you to, what would you like the world to know if you could just sum it up and kind of make them realize one thing that you feel is important?
Well, we all start out with that question. I'm going to prove it to the world. You know, I'm going to be a millionaire. And when you first get into this unknowingly, the information, then yes, you do everything possible, all the attraction noises and trying to get them to come in. And you start to learn your faults as you progress. And as you progress, you begin to think that, hey, you know, what's happening to me is special to me. And I need to gather that information and learn from it, just like I have over the years. And then, you know, listen to others that have made these mistakes and not repeat them. So the word respect has always been the thing that we need to have for them, by not going out to try to harass them, to try to lure them. They already know you're there. And they just want to know who is there, who is my new neighbor for this weekend, because they get a constant bombardment of people camping over, you know, the end of May all the way until the snow flies in December. And so they know, they learn, and they will approach you in those ways. And so being respectful to who they are And don't be afraid to speak your mind to them. Open up to them that who you are, why you're there, because they're learning you, and you want to learn them. And so if you respect who they are, that respect will be returned to you, and then you won't have the screams, the howls, the bluff charges, and all this negative contact that a lot of people seem to be experiencing. And like I said, just being mindful and respectful of who they are, because they are the protectors out there. And it's something that's taken me a long time, and I'm glad that I got to share with your audience here, to maybe advance them to that level, and understand and keep that mind open, because there's different ways of communication that I haven't experienced yet that other people are.
That really hits home, and I appreciate. Let's see. He says, I realized real quick that they do not want to be friends. They may be curious. We may be entertained for when they get bored, but they do not want to be friends. Friendly if you're lucky. I guess he had a bad experience. How do you think they read people very well? Do you think that they're really good judge of characters, or do you think it's our energy, or just you think they watch us for a while before they allow us to have?
They're not just going to pop out. And the example is like, put yourself in your home, or you're working in your yard and it's timbered or it's a shrubbery, and you hear somebody driving up your driveway. You're not just going to go out there and expose yourself and say, or put yourself out in the open to see who it is. You're going to stay back and you're going to observe. Oh, I know who that is. Then you'll come out. And but as somebody that you don't know, you're not gonna do that. You're just gonna observe them from a distance. And then, so people have got to put what they know about themselves as they do the same thing to us.
And it goes back to respect. It also goes back to Daddy running recon.
Yes, Daddy running recon, protecting the family. Mm-hmm.
Mel, I've really enjoyed you. Maybe I hope you'll come out back one day. I thought we'd have more questions, but we normally do our show on a Saturday. But I think you're very wonderful. I love, like I said at the beginning of the show, I love, love, love how you put a personality to your tracks, how you look for the why, how you bring out the character and the why of it. And I think that's important. And I was very honored to have you on, and I was very grateful for your time. And I hope you come back. At the end of each show or chat, I always give someone the chance to pay tribute to someone. Do you have someone you would like to pay tribute to?
I'd like to pay tribute to all your audience for, when they do watch and listen to this, that, I'm not calling myself a teacher, but somebody that has experienced this and learn, and then put the words that I've shared with you out there as your own to help grow. And that's the only way that we will make contact or continue the evolution of contact with them. And so I'm just, that's who I would like to, pay respect to, as your audience.
Well, we hope you come back, and they're already asking for you to come back again. And I thank you, and I thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for being a guest on our show. And welcome to the Muddy Creek family. You're stuck with us now.
Oh, no, that's fine. I mean, I've got events that we got coming up here that, if you don't mind, if
yes,
they
please.
We have in Chilliwack, British Columbia. I have a friend up there that is going to be doing a Bigfoot program up there for the weekend, and he hasn't quite decided the dates yet, but it's going to be the weekend of the 11th or 12th of July, or the 17th and 18th. And so if you want to get to know your friends up north, then, it's a possibility that you can attend his program. And then the Legends of the Mountains that I'm putting together with a couple of other friends in June 21st and 22nd, Packwood, Washington. We got the local researchers from that area on the south side of Mount Rainier that will be
Wow.
doing a town hall and then having camping with them so that they can interact with all the researchers and go out and do some other things out in the forested area around the Packwood area. And then I also part of the Yakama Bigfoot Con in October, and then this year, October 24th and 25th, is going to be this year's program. And so if you all are interested in learning more about your Pacific Northwest researchers, come on up, and you guys will be treated to lots of information and a lot of interaction with people.
Maybe before October we can have you on again.
Oh yeah. I'd be happy to come back.
All right, Mel. I thank you, and I hope to see you soon, buddy.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all soon.
All right, bye.
Later.